There were 5 mortal men to whom we gave immortality. Throughout the decade of the 1960s, they worked their special magic on us and left us spellbound. They made the squares feel hip, and even the cool cats were warmed by their presence.
I'd like to introduce my bookmaker. He's way in the back there.
They helped put an end to racial segregation in America by laughing bigotry out of existence. Like Pied Pipers, they led us out of the doldrums of the 1950s into the new frontier of a young president. 5 men who never even finished high school taught us that talent could overcome every disadvantage. In return, we gave them a license to break all of the rules we had to follow, spend all of the money we would never earn, party all night with the beautiful broads, and sleep late every morning. Live for us, we said. Live the lives we would live if we were talented, rich, and handsome. Be outrageous. Because of you, the world is no longer a dreary place.
Spin around for Bubby, spin around for Bubby, spin around for Daddy, and now make a big finish for Zadie. Now sit down, wait a minute, Sam. He didn't make Patchy kick.
The press tagged them the Rat Pack, and the name stuck. Dean Martin, Sammy Davis Jr., Peter Lawford, Joey Bishop, and the man who put it all together, Frank Sinatra, threw us a party that lasted 10 years.
Everybody hates a smart ass.
And there hasn't been one like it since.
You spit right in my eyes, son.
We revisit the glory days of Frank Sinatra and the Rat Pack, a time in our history that many of us would like to get back to, if we could just find a roadmap. In 1948, Frank Sinatra began his fall from the peak of American show business when he fell in love with Ava Gardner. For the next 2 years, their all-consuming affair was the best-kept secret in Hollywood.
It was combustion. I mean, as I'm sure that their passion was combustible, they were as well.
Rumors of the Sinatra-Gardner affair were sending shockwaves through the executive offices of Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer. Ava Gardner had been under contract to MGM since 1942. The studio had spent years grooming her for stardom. Her relationship with Sinatra seriously jeopardized both her career and the studio's investment.
One day, one night.
Frank Sinatra had made a lot of money for MGM, singing and dancing his way through some of its most successful musicals, like Stanley Donen and Gene Kelly's On the Town.
Jack, we're going on the town. New York, New York, a wonderful.
But Frank was 35 years old. As far as MGM was concerned, his best years were behind him. In January of 1950, Sinatra officially walked out on his marriage and announced his intention to marry Ava. Almost immediately, his world began to fall apart. The first blow was delivered by the press. A small army of reporters and columnists hounded Sinatra and Gardner wherever they went, turning their romance into America's first tabloid scandal. Letters from outraged fans began pouring into the mailroom at Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer. MGM executives were stunned by the level of public outcry being directed against Frank and Ava. Studio head Louis Mayer told Sinatra to end his relationship with Ava immediately. When he refused, Mayer retaliated by announcing a buyout of Frank's contract a year ahead of time and sending the check directly to his wife, Nancy. Nancy Sinatra vowed that she would never give Frank a divorce. Instead, she obtained a legal separation. That same day, Frank's assets were frozen and his property seized. Frank finally broke under the pressure. On April 26, 1950, during a performance at the Copacabana in New York City, Sinatra suffered a throat hemorrhage and was forced to cancel the remainder of his engagement. He left to join Ava Gardner in Tossa del Mar, Spain, where she was working on her latest picture, Pandora and the Flying Dutchman.
This is Pandora. She was bold and beautiful.
But the strains being placed on their relationship were taking a heavy toll. They fought constantly.
Each wanted what they wanted. I mean, Ava had great lust, and she was very sensual. Frank had great lusts and was very sensual. But they each were strong enough also to not be owned.
Now, Boulevard presents The Frank Sinatra Show.
Back in the States, Sinatra tried his luck with a television series at CBS.
Is this the place? This is it, pal. This is it. Why, with a little imagination and a lot of money, you can turn this place into a palace.
Do you have nerve enough to call this dump a lodge?
Well, let's call it a large dump, then.
It was canceled after only 13 weeks.
You made a deal, and a deal is a deal. I found you, now you find some other poor soul.
You robber, you. I'll get even with you yet.
Ah, this is the life.
Lodge. Look at this furniture. Say, do you think this thing is strong enough to hold me?
Are you kidding? You could sit on a hammock made out of Kleenex.
Frank's record sales had been steadily falling. For the first time in 7 years, Downbeat magazine had dropped him from top male vocalist to number 5. In a desperate attempt to revive his singing career, Sinatra recorded Mama Will Bark, a novelty tune with television personality Dagmar. It flopped.
Then when he did that thing with Dagmar, Dogs Don't Bark, I wanted to throw myself out the window. But in those days, he needed the money. In fact, the dog almost became a bigger star.
Columbia Records eventually refused to renew Frank Sinatra's contract. In November of 1950, Ava Gardner began shooting Showboat, the picture that made her a star. As Julie, the biracial heroine destroyed by the bigotry of the Old South, Gardner was hailed by critics and audiences alike as the most beautiful woman in the world.
Can't help loving that man of mine.
Meanwhile, Frank Sinatra watched his career continue in a free fall. Despondent and disillusioned, he headed back to the East Coast, to Atlantic City, the scene of his early glory days. Far from the Hollywood vultures and the fat cats of the record biz, Sinatra sought out the one man he knew he could count on. His old friend, Skinny D'Amato.
They were two skinny friends. I guess they had something in common and being Italian descent. So Skinny would entertain them. take them all over and show them a good time. Yeah. And so that's to boost his ego.
One morning, Skinny went out to a local jewelry store and bought Sinatra a beautiful, solid gold watch. Skinny told Frank, "This is to remind you, when you come back, you'll be bigger than you ever were."
He felt bad for him. So that's when he gave him this beautiful watch to seal their friendship.
At Skinny D'Amato's 500 Club, Frank Sinatra returned to his roots, to the people for whom he had never stopped being a star. From every corner of Atlantic City, the faithful turned out in droves to welcome him back into the fold.
He was Sinatra. It was like you were seeing the Messiah come to town. That's how he was to the Italians. Men went crazy for him. I mean, you saw husbands that said to their wives, "Don't do anything this week. We got tickets for Sinatra. Don't do this, don't do that. We're going to see Sinatra," whether you wanted to go or not, if you were a female. The husband says you go, you go.
I remember he was God. He'd come in a place, and my God, you couldn't move. They'd fight outside. Skinny had to hire 6 cops every night when he was there to keep the people in order, trying to fight to get in.
Skinny D'Amato and the other big nightclub owners proved themselves to be Frank Sinatra's true friends during those hard years. They kept him going financially and spiritually.
Frank trusted those guys. Because if a man from the racket said, "You're going to work for me next week and you're going to get yourself $15,000, you can go to sleep on that." First of all, they were the bosses. They owned all the clubs. So who are you going to work for? The guy that owns a delicatessen?
For nearly half a century, the bosses of the underworld had run the nightclub business in every big city in America. Just after World War II, they moved their base of operation to Nevada, the only state in the nation where gambling was legal. There they built a city of nightclubs, hotels, and casinos called Las Vegas. One of the founding fathers of Las Vegas was Mo Dalitz, a former boss of the Cleveland mob.
Mo Dalitz was one of the owners of the Desert Inn, the Stardust, the Frontier, the Silver Slipper, you name it. He was the boss. He was a great, great guy.
Dalitz, a close friend of Skinny D'Amato, gave Frank Sinatra a contract to sing at the Desert Inn. On any given night, you could walk into the Desert Inn and hear Frank Sinatra sing a 2-hour set for the price of a 50-cent Coke. The backbiters whispered that he had thrown it all away for nothing. But Frank Sinatra had gotten what he wanted, and to hell with what it had cost. While Frank Sinatra struggled to make a living singing in nightclubs, Dean Martin had become half of the hottest new comedy team in America.
That we have found a feeling higher than high, my own, my only, my all.
Martin and Lewis's first picture, My Friend Irma, had been a runaway smash hit. Within months, Paramount rushed out a sequel, My Friend Irma Goes West. Both films made millions.
And they're even funnier than ever, with Dean Martin singing a raft of new song hits.
Yours, love is yours because...
In 1949, Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis were booked to appear at the Flamingo Hotel in Las Vegas. The Flamingo had started out as the folly of gangster Benjamin Bugsy Siegel. By the time he completed it in 1947, his poor planning had cost the mob millions of dollars. In retribution, the boys closed Bugsy's account permanently. Flush with their newfound wealth and fame, Dean and Jerry arrived at the Flamingo with an entourage of friends and family. Night after night, their fans packed the main showroom for a taste of the Martin and Lewis magic. More importantly, they also packed the casino. Thanks to Dean and Jerry, the Flamingo had become the cash cow of organized crime. Bugsy Siegel's successors were now enjoying a handsome return on their investment. Dean's old mob friends from Ohio, the Fischetti brothers, now had major holdings in Las Vegas. The Fischettis had given Dean his first job as a dealer in their sneak joints back east and had later sponsored him into show business. To avoid being drawn into any conflict between his old bosses and the act, Dean shrewdly left all the team's business dealings in the hands of Jerry Lewis.
The line was, talk to the Jew. The whole mafia empire was run by Jewish lawyers. Each family had their own Jewish lawyer. So they knew what they were talking about. If I shook their hand and made a deal, they knew it was in granite. I handled the business. He played golf. It worked. But if anyone threatened me or if it looked like I was in trouble, he'd have been right there. He'd have taken care of business. He was very protective of me.
Dean wasn't protective of anybody but himself. The thing that occurred was Jerry was a skinny kid. And who the hell wants to see a skinny kid get hit, you know? So Dean would step in, and Jerry mistook that for protectiveness. But it was Dean's way of saying, I'm the boss.
Is it much further?
No, we're almost there.
Peter Lawford was one of the first Hollywood stars to blaze a trail to Las Vegas in search of excitement and cheap thrills. In the early 1950s, Lawford was still a bachelor and had an enviable reputation as a playboy.
Oh, I don't know. I think you have to enjoy living with yourself before you have nerve to ask anyone else to. Besides, you know how I am. Oh, here we are.
From time to time, Peter Lawford worked in Vegas with his old MGM co-star, the great showman, Jimmy Durante. Lawford's favorite haunts in town were the cocktail lounges, where he often made the scene with rock and rollers like Louis Prima and Keely Smith.
Our people basically were the cab drivers, the showgirls, the waitresses, the hookers, the dealers. Those were the people that supported us. When we were working, we worked till 6 o'clock in the morning, till 5, 6, 7 o'clock in the morning. Peter was just such a nice man, such a class. He's a class act, he really is. And I loved Jimmy Durante. Jimmy Durante was the best, bar none. And Jimmy and Peter got along wonderful, and Jimmy really loved him. Peter was good on stage. He was adorable. He could sing a little bit, he could dance a little bit, and he knew a lot of interesting stories he could tell.
During those early years in Vegas, no entertainer was more popular than Sammy Davis. Davis regularly headlined at the New Frontier Hotel. Night after night, the all-white audiences packed the showroom to see Sammy give them everything he had. They showed their appreciation with rounds of applause and screams of delight. But once the show was over, Sammy Davis was subjected to the same humiliations borne by all black performers who played Vegas in the 1950s.
When we used to work in Vegas, we had to go out and sit out by the swimming pool till our next appearance. You know, they didn't have dressing rooms or nothing for us. And when we lived here, we had to go on the west side, the black side, the Negro side, a place called Mrs. Shaw's, to stay over there. Sammy was going through the same things. He had to stay over there at Miss Shaw's when he first started coming here.
In 1951, Jim Crow was still very much alive in Las Vegas. Blacks were barred from every hotel and casino on the Strip. Every night after the show was over, Sammy waited in the alley behind the hotel for a taxi to take him back to the west side. From his window at Mrs. Shaw's rooming house, Sammy would gaze out into the night at the bright lights shining back at him from the Strip and wonder if the day would ever come when he would be allowed to mix with his adoring fans. All of the glitz and glitter, the entire garish spectacle of Las Vegas, was deliberately orchestrated by the mob for one purpose only: to lure gamblers into the casinos. In Las Vegas, Frank Sinatra became one of a select group of entertainers who drew customers to the casinos like a magnet.
Frank brought in gamblers, Dean brought gamblers, Sammy brought gamblers, Louie and I brought gamblers, Joey Lewis brought gamblers, Patty Page, Jimmy Durante brought in gamblers. Sophie Tucker brought gamblers too. The rooms couldn't pay for themselves. You've got to bring in acts that will bring in gamblers. That's what's going to pay for everything.
Early in 1950, the millions of dollars pouring into the Las Vegas casinos triggered a U.S. Senate investigation.
At New York's federal building, alleged overlord of gambling, Frank Costello, arrives to face the senatorial gambling probe.
Mob bosses were paraded in front of television cameras by the Kefauver Committee on Organized Crime.
Senator Toby now turns the heat on Costello.
You must have in your mind some things you've done that you can speak of to your credit as an American citizen. If so, what are they?
Paid my tax.
I never got money from any of those fellas.
None of those
None of those fellas. None of these that I've been reading about, or none that I knew. They never gave me anything.
None of the Shetties.
No.
You
I
think-
don't even speak to the... I mean, I met that Charlie once or twice. I don't even talk to him.
You don't like him?
No.
On March 1st, 1951, Sinatra was subpoenaed by the committee. Fortunately, he was allowed to testify at a private interview in his lawyer's office at the top of Rockefeller Center at 4 o'clock in the morning. Had Sinatra been made to testify publicly on national television, it would have certainly destroyed what was left of his career. In the years to come, Frank Sinatra would be asked many times to choose between betraying his friends or being labeled a gangster. To his credit, his loyalty never wavered.
He wasn't a gangster. But you know something? The mob people, they liked the guy. Again, he made those guys squirm. If the wise guy knew that Frank was mad, they went, gee, can you call him? What did I do, sir? Frank, what's he? They'd have killed for this man. They'd have absolutely killed for this man.
On October 31st, 1951, after 3 torturous years of legal wrangling, Nancy Sinatra finally agreed to a divorce. The moment he received the good news, Frank immediately contacted his old friends, Skinny D'Amato and Manny Sachs, head of Columbia Records, and asked them to make all the arrangements for a wedding. Less than a week later, at Manny's brother's home in Philadelphia, Frank Sinatra and Ava Gardner were married. Frank and Ava hoped that their marriage would legitimize them in the eyes of the press and earn them a certain degree of courtesy. But even on their honeymoon in Florida, they were chased down the beach and barraged with insulting questions. Ava remarked bitterly, "The reporters used to ask me, how does it feel to be a homewrecker? Now they ask me, how does it feel to be the wife of a has-been?" In December, 1 month after their marriage, Sinatra and Gardner flew to London to appear at a benefit for Prince Philip.
They organized a handful of us to fly over there for the benefit. Frank, Ava, myself, Janet, a handful of other people, okay? We arrived, they put us up at a hotel called the Washington Hotel. We are just wasted and wiped out. I mean, that's a lot of flying. And the next day, they wanted a photo shoot. So we all kind of pulled ourselves together. And Frank was a little slow in getting himself together. And as he came down the steps to join us with Ava, they were brutal to him, those British bums. "Well, the Mr. Sinatra finally has agreed to join us. Well, welcome. Shall we get you a throne?" I mean, the things they said to him. And that was when things were tough for him. Frank was always a gentleman. I gave him so many marks in those days. I mean, really, I could see how lonely he was, how desperate he was, and Ava extending herself and helping him during that period of time.
Frank was really in trouble then in 51.
Listen, I'll take you to the dance and then I'll take you to Coney Island.
Oh, that sounds great!
Not funny, but it's cooling.
And they asked me at the Morris Agency, which was handling him, would I give him a shot on the Texaco show.
I'll take you to Coney Island, too. Yeah, I'll take you to the beach and we'll sit on the boardwalk.
Oh, that sounds nice.
Yeah, well, I'll take you to the beach and we'll sit on the boardwalk. Yeah, I'll buy you a 50-cent dinner.
Finally got rid of me, eh?
Yeah, I told you. Who you going
And they said to me, you can have him for $2,500 a show. And I got so mad. I started to use 4-letter words and curse words. I said, wrong. He's a heavyweight. He's a star. He's a star. The position that he's in now, how dare you?
When Francis dances with me, holy gee, I'm as gay as can be. I take it.
I said, I'm giving him more than the top. I'm giving him $7,500 for one performance. Because if you're doing this to Sinatra, what are you going to do to me? What are you going to do to the other clients?
In March of 1952, the Sinatras attended the premiere of Frank's new picture, Meet Danny Wilson. But unlike previous years, the fans weren't there. The next day, the New York World Telegram and Sun printed the awful truth. Gone on Frankie in 42, gone in 52. That summer, the streets of Times Square had rocked with the same pandemonium that had greeted Frank Sinatra 10 years before. A new generation of teenage fanatics besieged the Paramount Theater to get a glimpse of their new heroes, Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis.
I don't think we can hear. What?
During their first week at the Paramount, Martin and Lewis broke Sinatra's old box office record.
How happy you are. We just want everybody to know that we're the happiest guys in the whole world.
Yeah, we are.
It's the greatest thrill of our lives.
My name is MacArthur.
This is unbelievable.
Thanks to his partnership with Jerry Lewis, Dean's future was now rock solid. But there was already trouble in paradise. Dean was clearly the less popular half of the team, and many saw him as merely the organ grinder to Lewis's monkey.
Dean didn't mind. It was better than shoveling coal in Yorkville or wherever, Victorville or wherever else he came from, you know? So, and a lot of us settled for that. You know, it was better than where we were. So what are we arguing about?
In his own nonchalant style, Martin rationalized that it was a small price to pay for the fame and fortune that was now his. In the end, however, Dean would have to choose between playing second fiddle to Lewis or trying to make it on his own as a solo performer. In 1951, Sammy Davis and the Will Maston Trio got their first booking at Ciro's, Hollywood's premier nightclub. It was the turning point in Sammy's career.
His presence on the stage felt like there were fans that were pushing your body against the back of your seat. And I knew I was experiencing lightning in a bottle. He stopped the show cold, and it was an incredible performance.
The teenage wonder, to whom Frank Sinatra had extended a helping hand all those years ago, had finally made it to the top of the marquee. Sammy went on to conquer the hot new medium of television, regularly guest starring on all the big variety shows. Davis was now well on his way to realizing his lifelong ambition to be the foremost tap dancer in the world. The skill with which he was able to execute the most difficult routines was unequaled. No dancer in the business could touch him.
He was an excellent athlete, you know. He was perfectly balanced. He was a tiny man, but, you know, he's an exceptional gift.
When God gave me Sam, they threw away the mold.
To spend one night in our old rendezvous and reminisce with you. You're my desire.
I mean, who do you know that can sing, dance, play instruments, be funny, and then be very nice at times, you know, most of the time? Who do you know?
Sammy had everything to look forward to. He could never have imagined that the nightmare of his life lay just ahead, or that Frank Sinatra would be the one to come to his rescue. By 1952, Frank Sinatra had been in a slump for nearly 5 years. Hollywood insiders agreed that nothing short of a miracle could resurrect his career. Ironically, it was Sinatra himself who came upon one, buried in the pages of a best-selling novel. The character of Private Angelo Maggio the doomed Marine in James Jones' World War II drama, From Here to Eternity, seemed to have been written for Frank Sinatra. From the moment he finished reading the book, Sinatra was convinced that he had been born to play Maggio. At that point, Frank Sinatra was so far out of the loop that he didn't even have an agent. But he did have a wife who was a major star. So it fell to Ava Gardner to persuade Harry Cohn, head of Columbia Studios, to let Frank make a screen test.
It's my knowledge that he offered to do it free. He didn't even want any money. But it's also my understanding that Ava made the phone call that got it.
Ava had called Cohen from Africa, where she was working on the MGM safari epic, Magambo, with Clark Abel. At Columbia Studios, Frank Sinatra's screen test convinced everyone, except Harry Cohn, who told Frank he'd get back to him. With nothing else to do, Sinatra then flew to New York for a few club dates.
Let me tell you what happened. My first marriage, my honeymoon, we had the room where the camel sign was, because it was the cheapest room. When you opened the window and that camel sign went, smoke came into our room. So I turned around and I had said to my wife at that time, let's go see Frank Sinatra. He was in the doldrums. He was working at a place called the French Casino. Okay? We went down there. There was nobody in the room, maybe 20, 30 people. This is when he was really going through bad times. And he came out and he started to sing. And when he sang a ballad, I mean, you knew he was singing to this woman. You knew it. He had quit that night. And he went to Magambo, which was making, the guy was making Magambo, Bavango. He got jealous because she was with Clark Abel. And I said, geez, what a life this guy's leading. What a life this guy's leading.
Sinatra joined his wife in Africa and waited for word from Harry Cohn.
You can be nice and sweet when you want to, can't you?
Sitting around the set, watching Ava play love scenes with the biggest leading man in movie history only served to reinforce Sinatra's anger and depression over the sad state of his own career. Tensions between Frank and Ava were running at a fever pitch. By the time Harry Cohn cabled Sinatra to report for work on From Here to Eternity, the Sinatra-Gardner marriage was in ruins. Sinatra took the next plane to Hawaii, where From Here to Eternity was already in production. Montgomery Clift, the great method actor from New York, had a leading part in the film. Sinatra and Clift had many scenes together. They soon became fast friends and drinking buddies. Monty became obsessed with helping Sinatra perfect his role and often stayed up half the night with him, rehearsing for the next day's shoot.
Why, it's Angelo Maggio.
Greetings, Mrs. Skip. Vegetable. Who's the broad? It's my sister.
The hard work paid off. Frank Sinatra's performance would earn him an Oscar nomination. But Sinatra's triumph had come too late. In December of 1953, Ava gave Frank the gate. The marriage had finally crumbled under the weight of her enormous successes and his bitter disappointments. A few weeks later, when the gossip columns reported that Ava Gardner and Peter Lawford had been seen out on the town together and were rekindling their romance, Sinatra went ballistic. He telephoned Lawford in California and threatened to break his legs if he ever saw Ava again. For the next 6 years, Frank Sinatra refused even to speak to Peter Lawford. In March of 1954, Sinatra attended the 26th Academy Awards presentation, accompanied only by his children, Nancy and Frank Jr. That night, he walked away with the Oscar for Best Supporting Actor. Frank Sinatra was on his way back to the top. When he finally got there, he would remember what a lonely place it could be.
This is quite a gun, Benny. Quite a gun. I did a lot of chopping in the war with a baby like this. A lot of chopping.
Frank Sinatra followed up his Academy Award-winning performance with a role that would come back to haunt him years later.
You can't do this. You can't do it.
You're wrong, lady. Take a look. Come on, take a look.
In Suddenly, Sinatra played a mentally deranged combat veteran hired to assassinate the President of the United States.
I can do it, and I'm going to do it.
But you're an American citizen.
Sure. And at 1 minute after 5, I'm going to be a very rich American citizen.
You'll never get away with it.
Shut up. I got a stomach ache. Take a pill.
Maybe the old man's right, Johnny. It's a terrible thing, a terrible thing.
Turn it off, will you? Just another man, a man.
But the president.
Yeah, I never killed a president before.
At age 39, Frank Sinatra became one of the leaders of a revolution in American cinema.
Frank was the teacher of us all. He was part of that modern generation. You know, we were not Americans in that classic style, and the war was over. And all the Americans that were in movies up to that point with crew cuts and T-shirts that said Georgia University and played all the good guys, those days were over. The war had changed it all. Nobody knew it, but we did.
Sinatra, the irreverent, streetwise tough guy, fit the times perfectly. By sharp contrast, Peter Lawford, the polite English gentleman, seemed painfully out of date.
Peter had a snappy 3 or 4 years early in his career. Very early. After that, nothing happened. You know, he'd run from one part to another. You remember those movies.
In 1953, It Should Happen to You starred Lawford in a familiar role of a suave urban bachelor.
Where are you going?
What is it?
Aren't you going to go around Columbus Circle?
What for?
Oh, to see it.
It?
What this whole date's about.
What?
What I've got that you want.
It Should Happen to You was Peter Lawford's swan song as a leading man. It would be many years before he was asked to work in the movies again.
Is it anything?
Is what?
You and he.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
Peter Lawford had reached the end of a career that had carried him from abject poverty to the lap of luxury. But just because Hollywood had turned him out didn't mean he had to stop living like a movie star. Peter still had his trump card to play. At age 30, he was one of the world's most eligible bachelors. Thanks to his striking good looks and aristocratic demeanor, rich society girls on both sides of the Atlantic had been nipping at his heels for years. Lawford had always succeeded in staying one step ahead of the pack. Now, he reasoned, it was time to let one of them have a bite. Peter Lawford and Patricia Kennedy announced their engagement at the beginning of 1954. Pat was a member of America's royal family, an heiress to hundreds of millions of dollars. The following spring, they were married in New York City. Outside the church, Lawford's fans mobbed the streets, almost overturning the newlyweds' limousine. Joseph P. Kennedy was reported to have said, "The only thing I can imagine that would be worse than having your daughter marry an actor would be having your daughter marry an English actor." Peter Lawford was now the son-in-law of one of the most powerful men in the United States. The same man whose cars he once parked back in Palm Beach during his impoverished teenage years. Peter wasn't aware of it, but the Kennedy family had already decided to cast him in the most important role of his life. There was just one catch. Peter would have to find a way to mend fences with none other than Hollywood's man of the hour, Francis Albert Sinatra.